I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
The friendship is sharing deal. Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
To get the Crime Writers on After Show right now, go to patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, during a traffic stop, a Mountie beats up the priest who abused him as a boy. It leads a reporter on a personal journey into the generational impact of Canada's residential schools for Indigenous children. We'll talk about Season 2 of Connie Walker's Stolen: Surviving St. Michael's. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of Dead on Deadline, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Rebecca.
Laura, how are you faring?
Well, I'm soldiering on here, Rebecca. I have COVID, and my voice has gone a little bit, but I'm thankful that I am vaccinated and boosted because I'm sure it could have been a lot worse. And it wasn't super fun the first 2 days, but trashy TV and I are now like this. I watched a Hallmark movie.
Nice. So are you feeling a lot better between Monday's show and this show?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Since the 5 minutes have passed since we started taping the second show.
Yes.
But I have almost finished the pot of tea I made. So,
yes.
I have that going for me.
Kevin hates it when we pull the curtain back, but we do tape both these shows consecutively. So Laura has not had time to rest and recuperate between. We're just making her do both at the same time.
I'm still wearing my cherry pajamas. Yep.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being here, Laura. And finally with us, our resident Doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, one of our favorite men in the world, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca.
Toby, what team shirt are you wearing right now? I see you on video. It looks like
Is that Mexico or something?
It's actually, it's Bulgaria.
Ooh.
Oh.
My dad and my mom were doing a Danube river trip, and my dad picked it up for me somewhere in Bulgaria.
Nice.
There's other news in Toby Ball land, though, right? Do you have any big announcements you want to share with our crowd?
Yeah, well, I am no longer have a 9-to-5 job. I have left, and I am just doing podcasting all the freaking time.
Yeah.
Wow, Toby.
Congratulations, Toby.
Thanks.
Yeah, Toby's going to be the most famous podcaster of all of us.
Toby has no excuse for not watching or listening to all this stuff.
It's true.
Now.
Yeah, well, so what's going on?
Well, I've got some projects that I can't reveal at the moment, but a few months down the line, I will have a few things coming out that I'm excited about. And yeah, so it's just that's going to be my 9-to-5 starting today, actually.
Well, Toby, I have some bad news for you. It is not actually 9 to 5.
Yeah.
9 to 5 in air quotes. It's actually
sometimes it's like
24/7.
Sometimes it's like 2 to 10. Sometimes it's like 9 to 1 and then like nothing for 4 days and you get really worried. And then it's like 12 days in a row of like 6 to 6, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So put your notions of 9 to 5 behind. But
yeah.
I am very, very, very excited for you because I will say, ever since Kevin got to leave his 9 to 5, I have been very, very envious of him because it's really exciting. It's really exciting, and we're really proud of you and happy for you. And
yeah, it's great. Guess it means there's going to be 20 more seasons of Strange Arrivals.
Yes,
35.
Strange Arrivals nonstop.
I can't wait for the Amityville Horror House season of Strange Arrivals.
Oh my God, I should do a haunted house themed podcast.
You should do a haunted house themed. Okay, so I don't know if you guys ever watch Ghost Adventures. It is stupid ass History Channel show that Kevin's daughter and my younger son Teddy bonded over when they were much younger. This was the thing. This and water slides was the thing that went from them being kind of chilly to each other to them being best friends. Was their love of water slides and their love of Ghost Adventures, which is one of those shows where like a team of quote paranormal experts goes into an allegedly haunted place, puts out like some sort of recording device and captures audio that sounds like
get out.
Does it sound like that? No, Kevin? It sounds like and then they put it through a filter and then they put words on the screen over this.
Sounds like you should go get yourself something to eat.
Exactly. Anyway.
I'm a scary ghost. Ooh, ooh.
I think that should be the next season of Strange Arrivals, is you going into scary houses and capturing.
Me just going into scary houses and
Can I
freaking
go with
myself
you?
out.
I will totally scream.
Yeah. I think that would be the next season of Strange Arrivals.
How about Toby Ball and the Scary Cat Detective?
Like, I screamed recently. I was at someone's house and I was like looking, there was a bird's nest on the porch and I was like, oh, is that a bird up there? And then of course the bird freaked out because it saw me and flew at me and I went, ah!
Yeah.
And they're like, it's a bird. And I'm like, I know, but I didn't expect it to fly at my head.
You should have seen.
You don't expect animals to go after you.
You should have seen what happened to me when a frog jumped out of a watering can when I was watering a plant last year. It was terrifying.
Oh my God. And then it got behind the couch and it was like, if I didn't find it, we were going to have to move.
That's right.
It was like the Amityville horror people would have stayed longer.
Correct.
Than Rebecca was with the frog if I couldn't coax it out.
Because I was like, that frog is going to die behind our couch, and then we're going to be smelling the frog for the next 6 months.
No, you were worried it was going to come out at some time and jump on your foot.
I was worried about both things.
Wouldn't one of your dogs eat it?
I have to tell you, I feel your pain, Rebecca, because Pippin, the naughty kitten, brought a huge ass frog in from the catio this week and brought it down to me and delivered it to me. And I was, and it was huge. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God. Same thing. Because if I had got up in the middle of the night, I think I would have I don't even know what would have happened if I had stepped on that thing.
Yeah.
It would have been the end of me.
Terrifying.
Yes.
All right. So
we live exciting lives in
New
Hampshire.
This is the country lifestyle. People who are listening in New York are like, we've got pizza rats. What the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yeah, we got a frog out of my house and I lost my mind.
All right. So Kevin, this is obviously our Thursday drop of our podcast. What is coming up on next Monday's show?
Next Monday, we're going to be talking about HBO's adaptation of The Staircase.
What's that? No,
The Staircase? You never heard of it?
The Staircase, a.k.a. the Citizen Kane of true crime. So HBO has made a fictionalized version of that, a scripted version, starring my favorite Mr. Darcy, Colin Firth, correct?
Correct.
And Toni Collette, correct?
Correct.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to talking about that. It has been the talk of Twitter for the last few weeks, and that is going to be the subject of next show. All right. So one last quick thing before we get into the subject of this episode. This Saturday, Lara Bricker, one final reminder, I will be talking to author Elon Green in your quaint AF town at Water Street Bookstore at 7 p.m. in Exeter, New Hampshire. We'll be talking about his book, Last Call, at a book event there at Water Street Bookstore. Lara Bricker, you will be there, right?
I will be there. Yes, I will be.
And Toby Ball might be there, right, Toby Ball?
Yeah, I think so.
And then after that book event, Lara Bricker and I have talked about perhaps bringing a couple bottles of wine to the bookstore if they let us do that. And if any Crime Writers On fans show up, hanging out for a few minutes afterwards and chatting with our fans. So we would like to invite anybody who has read Elon Green's book or who would like to chat with us afterwards to show up. I would highly recommend reading Elon's book. It is fantastic. One of the best true crime books I have read. Actually, I listened to it in a really long time. So please come meet us in Exeter at Water Street Bookstore this Saturday, June 4th at 7 p.m. All right. So Kevin, I'd like to get into the subject of tonight's podcast.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm going to drop that first clip right now.
One night in the late 1970s, something did happen. Two men met out here in the darkness. Their chance encounter felt like fate because they had met before. but under very different circumstances.
On a routine traffic stop in Saskatchewan, a Mountie recognized the driver as the priest who abused him as a child. The officer beat him up, but the priest never reported the attack, and the Mountie kept the incident to himself for decades.
He was abused physically, he was abused sexually. That part he never really talked about, but I know it happened because he told me it happened.
That officer was the late father of reporter Connie Walker. She wanted to know more about her Cree family's experiences with Canadian residential schools. St. Michael's School not only tried to expunge the children's indigenous culture, but also subjected them to physical and sexual abuse.
Those nuns and those priests, they called us savages. I think there's something wrong with this picture. Who were the savages here? We were the ones that were abused. We were the ones that were hit, sexually abused, emotionally hurt,
From Gimlet Media and exclusively on Spotify, Stolen, Surviving St. Michael's is Connie Walker's most personal investigation yet. In his study on intergenerational trauma, Connie gives voice to many of the victims of systemic abuse while she seeks out the priest who abused her dad. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from season 2 of Stolen. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes to hear our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Lara Bricker, so we've heard Connie Walker now. I believe this is the 4th serialized story we've heard her report, right?
Yes.
Every time we hear her do something, it seems to go to a different layer of depth.
Yes.
What do you think here? Are we experiencing yet another layer of depth of Connie Walker's journalism?
Oh, absolutely. Because I just feel like the first time we heard her, we realized, okay, this is somebody that's reporting on the indigenous community, who is part of that community, who has relatives and friends and people that they know. And each time we hear another story, we hear, because of that, the level of trust that people have in her and the way that they open up to her to share their stories that they wouldn't necessarily share with somebody else. And I think that that is giving us just not only a depth of reporting in terms of the information that is coming out, but also Connie's bringing her understanding and her own personal place in that community to this reporting. So it's taking it to another level. And this has been circling around. First, it was, the missing Indigenous women. And we've been hearing about these residential schools for a while now. And now we're hearing the personal story of what happened at those schools affected her family and her own quest, which I think is really interesting to see her putting herself really into the story in that way and sort of starting and opening up this story and the way that she's telling it with this very, the window on herself and then expanding her lens.
The thing that occurs to me, Kevin, is that obviously this is a first person in somewhat story for Connie Walker, right? She's part of the story. She's in the story. She's also revealing a tremendous amount immediately about the trauma of her own childhood, right? As she starts reporting the story. There's no way she can't, because part of the story is the trauma she experienced at the hands of her father, whose story she is trying to tell. What do you think about that beginning to the story? Because it can be difficult. And for some journalists, it would not discredit the story, but it would, as a listener or a reader, sort of make you kind of off balance. But I didn't feel that way listening to this at all.
Yeah, I mean, at its basic level, the story has a great hook, right, to start with, that it's this incident between a police officer and a motorist and what was really happening there. Then you have two people that go in different directions, and what about their lives? How did they get to that point, to that incident on the side of the road? And what did that say about the rest of their lives? We have had hosts that do first-person reporting, but few of them have ever been this personal or introspective. I think maybe the Ballad of Billy Balls kind of came close to that. I mean, that was, had the same sort of, father-searching theme. But this time it's tied to a much more substantive thematic anchor when we're talking about these residential schools. And she'd be the perfect person to do this, even if it wasn't her father, if it was a stranger. And the fact that it was her father and it's an opportunity for her to bring us along her journey to learn more about her family and the pain that they had, this is something special.
Yeah. What do you think about the intimacy of this podcast, Toby? Because, Connie all of her podcasts have been really intimate. She's always been reporting on a community that she's familiar with. She does not shy away from playing extended tape of her conversations with other people. She's one of the only journalists we've ever listened to where that is actually interesting, because her discovery and her conversations are, at least to me, like, I want to hear the whole thing. But this is so unbelievably personal and intimate, and that is where she's beginning. I'm curious to know your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I agree. The idea of starting off with her father and using his attack on that priest who he pulls over is kind of is an interesting entry point. But she starts with that and her experience with her father, and then expands out to sort of her extended family and the people of the generation older than her, who I think all went to the same residential school. Is that right? Or most of them did. And then from there, like, after kind of establishing, sort of what the residential schools are about and the effect that it's had on her family, she then expands again to bring in other voices. And yeah, I don't know how she does it. I mean, I think part of it is that she's just like a very sort of empathetic interviewer, but she gets people to really be open with her. And yeah, I agree with you. She does play these extended periods of tape. And I think it just gives you such an interesting and sort of full picture of these different personalities, like lives they've led, and then the effects, as you find out, just horribly traumatic experiences that they have as children, like as young as 5 and 6. It's a great, great podcast. It's a tough listen in terms of sort of emotionally taking in what these stories are. I mean, this is like a widespread thing that the indigenous community was singled out for.
Yeah. What's amazing to me is that one of the reasons why I think her extended periods of tape work, I mean, they work on several levels. I mean, we'll talk about episode 4 in a little bit, which is a very different kind of episode than anything else we've ever listened to, frankly. But one of the reasons why her extended lengths of tape work when she's interviewing people and learning things is that we are learning them with her, because she's doing actual investigation in real time and we're hearing it happen. One of the great scenes that happens in this podcast where that happens is in the library, where she's actually looking through those records and finding the photographs.
Father Gauthier has a lot of photos of himself. Looks like he's in a play, playing a cowboy. Oh my God. What is that a picture of? Him walking down the street, giving a piggyback to a native kid? It's weird.
That being said, Laura Bricker, Connie Walker, I will say, is an unbelievable journalist in this one regard. For many of her projects, she sets out with a mystery that seems needle in a haystack, near impossible, and then seems to cut to the quick and get very freaking close to the answer very quickly, right? So this was like at the end of episode, 2? That she's like down to 2 guys. It's like her brother posted this very vague thing on Facebook, and I'm thinking, like, I don't know, is this thing even true? Who knows?
Maybe. I think Connie's off her game. We're at episode 4, and she still hasn't found the priest yet.
Oh yeah, but she's down to it, right? But
I know,
it's like let me stretch, because what she like. It's like what was the season 2 of Missing and Murdered, right? Finding Cleo, right? Like we found Cleo. So it's like she's unbelievable, like, and just in terms of like landing the plane level of journalism that we have here, right? So it's not just a narrative that we know isn't going to go anywhere, right, Laura?
Oh yeah, and I feel like it is going somewhere, and I feel like we hear right away when they're like, "Is it this person? Do you know who it is?" When she's talking to that one guy, and he's like, "I do, but I'm not going to say." And she's like, "Is it Father so and so?" And he's like, "Yep."
Because I think I know who it is, but it's not. I'm not going to say it on this thing.
Eugene points to the microphone sitting between us on the table. And I asked the question I've been waiting to ask since we sat down.
Do you think it could be Father Gauthier?
Yeah. I actually just about killed Father Gauthier.
That was the guy that was like cautioning her about sort of like asking too much or asking too, like getting too involved.
Don't play with it. Yep.
Don't play with it.
Eugene.
Don't open the, and I thought that was a really interesting character because listening to that interview, you could see that there was nobody else that was going to get that story from him that he was telling Connie, and the amount of trust that he placed in her to let her record that. Because he said, "You've got that thing on." Of course, he was talking about whatever she was using to record, but he was somebody that was just intimately involved with not only people that had been victims, but just everything that was happening with that. That was somebody that really knew the story. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really powerful, having now heard from the victims, to hear the other side of this, when I'm sure she's going to find some people from that school to talk to. I'm sure she's already found them. Like, who am I kidding?
Hey, Keurig coffee drinkers. Need a cold coffee with a bold flavor? Dunkin' Cold K-Cup pods were specially crafted for cold coffee. Brew over ice straight out of the Keurig coffee maker for smooth, delicious Dunkin' taste you know and love. Find your next Dunkin' Cold coffee in the roasted coffee aisle.
I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets. And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
All right, Kevin, should we pause the show for a moment? And
I'm doing the timeout thing with my hands.
Like, not like a dog does some business, but like how we do some business.
I don't want to know about that either.
Like, do your business. Like we said to our dogs, do your business. It's not like that. It's like, Kevin, do your business.
I think some people would say it's very similar.
Kevin, do your business.
Gonna drop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kevin, do your business.
Oh, way to change the mood of the entire discussion.
Walk in a circle, Kevin. Do your business.
Facing north. Right now on Patreon. You go to patreon.com/partners in crime media. Sign up. One of the things that you can get, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club. And Toby, can you tell everybody what book is coming up next so they can start their summer reading, get their homework done?
Okay, so there's a brief hiatus for a couple months, and then we'll be coming back in August. And the book is When the Moon Turns to Blood by Leah Satilli. I don't know if it's actually out yet. I think it comes out sometime in June. So, you can look it up on the internet. But that will be the August book, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Rebecca, did Toby put in a request for time off from Deep Dive?
He has to call HR for that, and then HR will let me know.
I don't think we've cleared that.
I have not cleared it, but I sometimes don't get the no memo from HR right away.
That was kind of a unilateral decision.
Sometimes there's a delay.
Lara and I might be going on strike. This kind of management pressure continues.
The Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation.
It's Crime Writers On.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see everybody on These Are Their Stories instead. Right now, we've got a new episode that dropped yesterday, and it is the SVU Season 5, Episode 19, Sick. This is the one where they've got a billionaire toy mogul who brings his young friends back to the special room, and bad things happen.
Oh, what could it possibly be about?
It's not Michael Jackson at all.
Nope.
But then in the end, there's this crazy twist where Cindy Williams, who is from Laverne and Shirley, she's a grandmother of a child who has leukemia, but she doesn't have cancer. It's Munchausen by proxy.
It's nuts.
And it's a typical
nuts. And we have a great guest on that one.
Yeah, you know what podcast he's from, guys? He's from an SVU podcast. It's called Munch My Benson.
So, Kevin, before we end the business section and before you start walking in that circle doing your business, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Kat Stratter and Mary Locke. Bless you.
Bless you, and thank you for being on our Patreon, everyone who is there. Go to our website, sign up for our free newsletter, check out everything that's going on. And Kevin, does that end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to fade that music out right now. All right, so Kevin, Laura was just talking about that conversation that Connie has with her father's friend, Eugene. That was an incredible scene. They have it outdoors at a busy roadside restaurant, right? We hear cars zipping by, and he gives her a limited period of time to talk. I kind of feel the clock ticking during this conversation, right? And he's telling her a lot of things, but she has questions for him. And he is waving her off of this story again and again, even as he's giving her incredible details that include him at one point holding one of these priests over the balcony.
Right.
Himself committing acts of violence and revenge against one of these priests. And he gives her a warning, right?
Well, I don't know if warning or advice or whatever it is, but the way he phrased it is really so powerful. He said, don't play with this.
We don't profit here from it. We take care of it, but we have to pass it down. Use this in a good way. Don't play with this, And I see people playing with it.
I think that's the name of the episode as well. Don't play with this. It was probably the most honest rebuke that you could give a reporter, as opposed to don't go there or you've got no right or anything like that. It can be said of all of us. We tell stories about murder and mayhem, and not everybody appreciates that. But when he says don't play with this, to put it that way, like playing with it makes it seem more like some kind of black magic or something that you're toying with, something that could blow up that you can't control. To put it like that, it's very powerful. It means that, that there's kind of an accusation that you have a responsibility to not break the glass pane here. So I don't know. The way that he said that, not as an admonition, but just to sort of give her stern advice. You don't want to play with this. Don't play with this.
Toby, Father Gauthier is sort of at the center of this conversation with her conversation with Eugene. He's one of the two priests that sort of is at the center of this investigation at this point in the podcast. And Eugene tells this story about his confrontation with this priest at this, I guess it's this party or
reunion or something,
or
Yeah, it's a residential school reunion.
Exactly. And
who the hell would want to go to that?
Well, it's sort of
that
like
sounds sad.
You've shared a shared traumatic experience.
Yeah, but after this scene at the library, which I would love to hear your thoughts on too, when you hear all of these different takes on these priests, can you just talk a little bit about these different takes we hear from all these different characters in the podcast? Because there are many, and it's like the role that these men play in these people's lives, the perspectives are pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a couple different things. And one is sort of what you learn factually about them. Father Gauthier in particular, who is clearly a monster. A couple people allege that he sexually abused them. He's sort of pointed out again and again and again as being a bad guy. And they also have, they bring up some weird stuff about him. Like he has this quote where he said about being a priest, you are eaten by others every day. Sometimes it is pleasant. Sometimes it is unpleasant, which is just I don't know if I have much of an interpretation of that, but it just seems like kind of a strange way to characterize your work as
and then he was getting eaten by worms, so maybe he knew what was going on.
Well, but that's the other thing. It's So there's that, but then there's also when Eugene's asked about whether Gauthier should be, in jail or punished, and he basically says no. At this point, what's the point? And he wouldn't want to be in jail if he was really old, and all this. And then one of Connie's relatives says that he was a good priest. She thought he was a good priest despite all these other things. But then she also tells the story about how he goes away and then comes back and he's infested with worms that are crawling out of his body, which, seems like such an incredible metaphor that you wonder if it could possibly be it's quite a visual.
What did you make of that? I'm serious. What did you make of that? I had a couple thoughts. One of them was tapeworm.
Yeah.
One of them was hookworm. Like, because, tapeworm, the way they do it is they like put a stick and they actually wind the worm up.
Yeah.
And you try not to break it because that's problems.
And then there's also like the worm that's botfly, like can come out of your face. Another one is like the hookworms that are in your feet. Like I actually was thinking like he may have come back with some sort of thing.
Yeah.
But he also, they said it was a motorcycle accident. He landed in a leper colony. Like, did he have leprosy? Like I was like, what was that?
It wasn't good, whatever it was.
Yeah. Was it a manifestation of just like his spiritual rot?
No.
No.
It
was
it was definitely like he got some kind of infestation, but I could see like if you knew the guy and then he shows up and he's like dripping worms, that you would be like, okay, well that's karma or a metaphor for your soul or something that's just like completely apt.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of the picture of Dorian Gray, right? It's like you're wearing your sins all over you for everybody to see.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about episode 4 because episode 4 is really unlike anything I've heard before. It is an extended montage of testimonials of victims of residential schools. And the episode is unrelenting and unapologetic about stringing these together. And one of the things that I find really stunning about it is that not only is it just like beautifully done and captivating and non-repetitive, but many of the stories serve to corroborate other stories that we hear sort of in order in the episode. Laura, what did you think when you listened to this? I mean, aside from the fact that it was obviously a difficult listen, when you were hearing these stories and sort of hearing the way it was strung together, what were your reactions?
It was an intense and very emotional episode. And for me, every time I hear the stories about how, young children were basically, taken away from their families to these schools and they were not allowed to speak Cree. And if they got caught speaking Cree to each other, like they would pull out the strap and
when they
and
first
beat them.
got there, and they didn't even speak English. Yeah.
And they didn't know how to speak English. And it was just, it was like, these are children. And hearing all of them with these stories, it's just horrific. And I was glad that we got to hear so many different stories and that they all did sort of tie into each other, that they, it's like this story tied into that one, like very similar things were happening to a lot of people. And I started thinking about sort of like the bigger picture of like these residential schools, which we've heard Connie report on before. And like every new podcast and reporting project is like another bite at the apple to expose them and get to like the core of everything bad that has happened there. But I wonder, how long is it going to take? Because it just seems like so much awful, horrible abuse and just awful stuff happened.
Father Gucci, I remember him also. Yeah.
How do you remember him?
Father Gucci?
Yeah.
He took part in some of the punishments that we used to get. Even now, as we're talking here, I've got a lump in my throat. Yeah.
It was good to hear that. And I think now with those stories sort of at the front of your mind going forward into the next step of like confronting the people who were there when that happened that didn't stop it. For me anyway, I'm going to be like, fuck right, take them down. Because you feel so helpless listening to the stories of what these children went through.
I mean, Toby, there's a tremendous amount of inhumanity that was it's very, very, very well documented in this episode, right?
Yeah. And she brings this up. I don't know if she brings it up in episode 4 or episode 3 before, but that generation's getting older and it's the chance to document what happened. And it's just, like you're right. It's not repetitive in any way. There's not 10 seconds of this that isn't riveting. But the sort of shared, trauma of the experience, how young some of these kids were. Years ago, I was doing some research on Indian boarding schools in the U.S., but this was like in the 1800s and stuff. And what the sort of motto was kill the Indian to save the man, which is essentially what's happening here. I mean, it's cultural genocide, right? I mean, that's exactly what they're trying to do, is they're trying to wipe out that culture and, sort of quote unquote assimilate these kids into English speaking or French speaking Canadian culture. And it's devastating, and I think it's really important. It's a lot different than anything else we've heard. But again, I think people need to hear it, definitely.
Kevin, what do you think about episode 4? Because it's just, in terms of the cadence, in terms of the way it was put together narratively, it is a montage for like 80%.
Yeah, I mean, it's both moving and marvelous. Connie really kind of, for the most part, stays out of the way, right? A couple times you hear her kind of gently probe with a follow-up, but mostly she went into it sort of as she stated at the end of episode 3 that she wanted to have the victims just tell their stories. And for some reason, even though that's what it is, it doesn't feel out of place in this series, although in sort of a format style, it's very different. And I haven't heard episode 5 yet, but I'm assuming that it kind of dips back into Connie's news gathering that we've been going along. But yeah, it really was so moving, and they were able to just kind of tell their own stories. It wasn't lip service, but at the same time, it also advanced the story through the things that they said. They all provided little clues about the different priests involved and the things that happened to them. Also, kind of what Toby said, something struck me was that when we hear their names later on, how many of them have anglicized names? They aren't today using names that were given to them by their indigenous culture. They have, names that were likely thrust upon them by the institution or other means interfering with their ability to thrive as First Nation people. So the theme that runs through all of Connie's series, whether it's about, kidnapping and murder or it's about systemic abuse at these residential schools, it has to do with the way that other people devalue the lives of indigenous people and what they are able to achieve when they dehumanize them.
They give them freaking numbers.
Numbers.
Yeah,
I heard they remembered the numbers of other kids that they were there with. They remember their own numbers. They remember the numbers of other kids that they were there with. It's the Holocaust, right? What I thought was so stunning about this episode, and the reason why it deserved to go on as long as it did, or even longer, is that these are stories that have not been told before. And it's like, it's not like a Holocaust story or a story about a genocide that we know about doesn't deserve to also be told, but this is one we don't know about. And this is not generations and generations ago. What was the last residential school closed? What we heard on the last podcast, like in the 90s? Like it's insane, like how recent this history was. Children being given numbers, children being starved, children being beaten for crying when they're given the news that their grandparents died. Children being beaten for not understanding a language that they've never heard before. Ripped away from their families at 5 and 6 years old, and then their parents being threatened with arrest if they didn't let them go. Like, I just thought the whole episode was stunning. The one thing that was so beautifully done, there was a musician at the end who did a song, and then they was orchestrated at the end.
Her brother, Connie's brother.
So beautifully. But the way that they sort of put it together with orchestration at the end was just incredibly moving. Kevin, you sent me a note, and I'm going to read it on your behalf. Like, I do think that this podcast is an important piece of history. I really do. I think it's a documentation and a piece of history that is really something to behold. I really do.
Dunkin' cold coffee can be brewed at home in your Keurig coffee maker with Dunkin' cold K-Cup pods. Just brew it hot over ice and enjoy flavor that's crafted to serve cold. The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be.
I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
The friendship is sharing deal. Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
All right, so I think we should let our listeners know, should they check out Connie Walker's new podcast for Gimlet? It is a Spotify exclusive, Stolen, Surviving St. Michael's. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
Big thumbs up. I love anything that Connie Walker brings her voice and her reporting and her humanity to is something that I want to listen to. And this, I just feel like, takes it to the next level. It was heartbreaking to hear the stories of what happened to children in these residential schools. It was rage-inducing for me. Even though I'm sick, I was still feeling rage from my couch listening to this. But I just think that we have voices in this that we wouldn't necessarily hear if it wasn't Connie that was doing the reporting, which is bringing a level of credibility and authenticity and depth to the reporting that is bringing just this really, really important story to light. And I'm eager to see where it goes from here. So it's a big thumbs up.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Stolen, Surviving St. Michael's?
Yeah, I'm a big thumbs up too. There's a handful of podcasters who, when they have something new coming out, I sort of perk up and pay attention. And Connie's definitely one of those. It's incredible on a bunch of different levels, both as sort of the story of her family and then sort of the sort of oral history stuff that she does, particularly in episode 4, is really, it should be required listening for anybody who's got any interest in this at all. And I think probably just anybody, because it is, as you were saying during the main review, Rebecca, I mean, this is not distant history. This happened fairly recently. The effects of it are still being felt. It's really, really good. So a huge thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
There is a reporter out there that does a better job covering this issue, but I don't know what her name is. And there is a story out there that goes into more detail, is more touching, more impactful, covers more ground, but I can't tell you what it's called. This is just a touching masterpiece. I sent Connie an email saying, you owe me a big box of tissues, a giant bar of soap to scrub my skin, and some blood pressure medicine. This has everything. Toby's right. I mean, there's just a couple of people that are just unique in their talent and the way that they approach things. This is just such magic that we have a story that is this important, that touches somebody who can tell a story this well in this kind of way, right? This is just like the stars aligning here for what could be a classic podcast. The whole issue in Canada of residential schools is having its George Floyd moment, right? It's becoming something that we're not just thinking about it in the background, we're actively looking at it. And this kind of systemic abuse, it's just an amazing piece of journalism that looks at intergenerational trauma and tells little stories in big ways and big stories in small, intimate ways. I couldn't put a thumb high enough for this. It's a big thumbs up.
Yeah, me too. We're really on a roll, right? With some really great content lately. Like, I am just so excited about the things we've been listening to lately. And, we reviewed Will Be Wild last week. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is going to be in my top 10. Yeah, this is also going to be in my top 10 of this year. Like, no doubt. This podcast is excellent. And this is another great example of something that, it's easy to say, like, this is a hard listen. It's also a good listen. Like, it's freaking good. Yeah. Like, it's well made. It's beautifully produced. Like, one thing that we didn't even talk about is just like how gorgeously delivered it is. That I do not talk about people's voices. I do not. But if I could listen to one person's voice for the rest of my life, it would be Connie Walker's voice. Like, one thing that I love about the way that she delivers her reporting is that she is the same person in her narration as she is in her interview tape, as she is in the field. So what you feel and hear with her, which is singular, and you do not hear this with everyone. And I encourage listeners who listen to narrative journalism to pay attention to this, because it's something that I think really shows who a journalist is in their heart and who they are in terms of just like how they deliver their stuff. When you hear that somebody is exactly the same person when they're talking to their subjects, whether that subject is a stranger, whether that subject is someone they're really pushing on and interrogating, and that person sounds the same when they are talking to you, in a microphone, that is like legit. That is a legit voice in the medium. And there's no one more legit than Connie Walker at what we do. So yeah, I think this is the best work we've heard from her, and that is saying a lot. Huge thumbs up for me for Stolen Surviving St. Michael's. Like all of you said, I can't say enough good things about it, and I'm just going to leave it there.
You know how Spotify just gave Conan O'Brien $150 million?
Yeah.
Should have been $149 million, and they should give Connie Walker $1 million fucking dollars.
How about give Conan
American dollars, by the way, Connie. American dollars.
How about flip that? Flip it.
I don't know if Connie could do a weekly show forever. She needs some time to do that quality news gathering.
That's true. Although, by the way, whatever car she was in recording her tape, really quiet. Very impressed by it.
Yeah, she's probably got some good wheels now.
All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We do. Hold on just a minute and I will find it. Yes, we have a cat of the week this week. It's actually a dog. Finally, Rebecca, for you.
Oh, God, no more ugly cats, no more smelly cats, no more butt-shaved cats.
It's just a 1 week hiatus for cats. We're bringing a dog in for 1 week. Barbara Roseman would like to nominate Rosie Dog for cat of the week. Rosie has been diagnosed with a probable brain tumor.
Oh, God, it's a sad dog of the week.
Rapidly. We got her from a shelter at about 12 weeks old.
I don't like that.
Have had a glorious 11 and a half years. We had no idea what she might be until we read about puggles. And now the average puggle is less than 25 pounds, but Rosie is around 40.
Good for Rosie.
But in every other respect, her mix of pug and beagle shines through. It must have been a larger than normal beagle involved. Wink, wink.
Oh.
We love her. We will love her to the end. We'll miss her terribly, as will her sister Martha, a year younger and from a different shelter. Enjoy some pics of Rosie and Martha being good dogs together. And Rosie is very cute. So I'm really sorry, Barbara. And I hope that Rosie enjoys some good time with you all and you have a good goodbye.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I know.
That is not acceptable. Rosie, come on. There can be a miracle for Rosie. Is there a GoFundMe for Rosie that we can share? Please send it to me.
Yes.
All right. Laura Bricker, if anyone would like to set up a GoFundMe for Rosie and have you share that on Twitter. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe that's not what her owners want. But anyway, if folks would like to reach out to you on Twitter and send you their animals, maybe they're healthy animals next time to be cat of the week or dog of the week, only because I can't take it. It's so freaking sad. How can they find you on Twitter?
And they can find me at Laura Bricker.
And of course, you can also email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com or submit your pets on our Facebook group. That's how we get many of our pets to be cat of the week. Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you and compliment you on your Bulgarian football jersey. How can they find you on Twitter?
At TobyBallNH.
And Kevin Flynn, if folks want to reach out to you and say, no, there is no better reporter and there is no better story than Connie Walker and the story she is telling, how can they find you on Twitter?
I don't think you got the point of the syntax.
I did. I got it.
God damn it, Rebecca. It's
Twitter.
Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, and I encourage you to join our incredible community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. Just look for us on Facebook, go to our page, click join the group. We'll let you in if you answer like at least one of those questions. Support the show on patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll get all the incredible content we make back there. It is really, really good. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our line editor is the very, very smart college graduate, Olivia Burdett. The executive producer of this fine program is Kevin P. Flynn. By the way, did I mention he's also very handsome?
Yeah.
This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement where our aunties are always, always, always welcome. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Wow.
Look at that. Look at
it's
that,
like a
baby.
beer stein.
It's like a beer stein teapot. I'm like, I broke it out because I've been drinking tea like a mad woman.
Well, you sound good.
Yeah, I sound better than I did, which is a relief. Because the first couple of days, I sounded like I smoked like 5 packs of cigarettes.
You did, though.
Sexy.
I did. Yeah, I did, totally.
You know, you sounded like Donnie Wahlberg in the Very Scary Little podcast.
And here's something you're really not going to believe.
Yeah.
Or whatever he says.
You heard that right.
Partners in Crime Media.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.